So we're of course talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth, and there's frankly just like a lot of shit to talk about from the last like day or so. I suppose coming out of Thailand Game Show, there's a bunch of interviews. There's at least like 4 or 5 like articles and interviews and things that I'm aware of. I don't know what all is worth talking about. I know there's some good like translations and things out there that we're definitely going to discuss. There's stuff like Hamaguchi talking about Zack, talking about the snowboarding mini game, talking about the Whispers coming back, like confirming that shit, talking about looking at like fan theories and taking things like that into consideration. It's all kinds of interesting stuff. So let's just hop into it. Due to Zack's involvement in this game, fans cannot help but concoct many theories about how the events in this game will all play out. When asked if they've seen any of these theories from various social media threads, Hamaguchi says they are not in a position to say whether any of this is correct or not, but always check the pulse of the players regarding feedback for the game. Fan feedback is very important to the team, and they would like to let fans know that these things do not fall upon deaf ears. They appreciate it because it shows a certain level of excitement about wanting to play and delve deeper into the world of Final Fantasy. So I think that's cool. It's good that they like keep up with fan discussions and things like that. I don't think that necessarily like fan theories or whatever should dictate what happens in the remake trilogy, but there's nothing wrong with like if like the fans come up with like a good idea for something, like kind of using that or taking that and kind of spinning it and doing your own interpretation of it or something along those lines. Hamaguchi also clarified that the 2-disc release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was nothing more than a straightforward storage decision and not a reference to the original Final Fantasy VII release in any way. The volume is so large, not just because we have an open world map, but the story content alone in Rebirth is so much more than in Remake that simply won't fit in one disc, says Hamaguchi. We just gave up on trying to fit it into one disc, so we just opted to add an additional disc instead. Hamaguchi followed up by saying that the world map was the most challenging part of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to develop, as they tried very hard to strike a good balance between size and content. If we made it too big and spacious, players might think that there's nothing to do in such a wide space. If we made it too small and narrow, players might not get a good sense of adventure. So I actually like this clarification on the game being 2 discs. I've actually heard the argument before about it being like an open world style game, like that's why the game is 2 discs, and certainly that's going to be a part of it, but he's clarifying here too that it's the story content. There's just so much story content. The game is just so damn big in terms of the story. That's another reason why it's 2 discs, which is pretty cool. I'm just very much looking forward to playing this game because Remake already had like a decent sized story, right? It's like roughly about 30 hours or so, whatever it is exactly, depending on your playthrough. And this is going to have more than that, but also all the side questing and the side content and the open world to explore. And I just fucking can't wait to play it, man. Part of giving players activities to enjoy is the decision to bring back the mini games from the original. We took what was included in the original Gold Saucer and tried to include everything in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Sadly, since Rebirth takes place into the Forgotten Capital, the snowboarding sequence will not be included and will be saved for the latter game. We want to change the image of the game from Gold Saucer having lots of mini games to the game as a whole having lots of mini games. So I think that's a very important reveal from Hamaguchi because there's people that are just so weird in this community. They're just so dead set on what they thought was going to happen. A lot of people wanted the game or thought the game was going to end in North Crater. We've had the confirmation for a while now it's Forgotten Capital. So those people were like, well, they're moving the Forgotten Capital. It's going to be happening post North Crater or whatever. And obviously that's not the case now. If we're not getting the snowboarding minigame, the snowboarding sequence, then we're not getting North Crater. Move on. We talk about this a lot. It's just weird to me, man. Like people can't accept that like their theory or what they wanted isn't correct. So like they think the devs are going to change everything for them. Like, okay, so we're going for Forgotten Capital, so it's got to be post North Craters to make my theory make sense or whatever. Whatever that weird shit is, I don't know. I just don't understand it, man. I'm just here to enjoy shit. So with this question and answer, we don't need to read the whole thing. It's just asking about the banter between Cloud and Sephiroth during the calm flashback and why, Cloud's acting a little bit different, etc., etc. But it's that last line, last paragraph that's important. Another thing is that we were trying to add new elements and to see how players would react. We added Whispers, which will of course appear again in this game. Same thing goes with Zack, and this would bring new excitement to find out what will happen next in the story. So there we have a confirmation from the man himself that the Whispers are returning, which isn't really a surprise if you pay attention to the ending of Remake, right? It could be interpreted that when Cloud hits that like final blow that makes the explosion and they go to Edge of Creation, that like maybe in that moment the Whispers could have been destroyed. If you actually slow the scene down and you see like when Cloud hits him, there's like a ball of Whispers around Sephiroth. So you could maybe interpret it that like there he destroyed all the Whispers, but we're seeing him use the Whispers against us after the Harbinger's defeated. Like, so it was pretty obvious that the Whispers weren't fully destroyed. I just don't know if they're going to be doing the Fate Ghost shit. Like, I don't know if we're going to be seeing them throughout Rebirth. Like, if we try to deviate from the path, like, they pop up and make things happen like it's supposed to. We haven't seen them in any of the trailers or anything, so maybe it's just like a tool that Sephiroth will have at his disposal now. Like, when we're fighting Sephiroth or seeing him or whatever, fighting Genova, there could be Whispers involved still or something along those lines. I don't know exactly. I could be wrong here, but I believe like the Harbinger was what was making the Whispers like keep Fate in line and Destiny in line, right? So we should be broken free of that. So it should just be something that Sephiroth has, again, maybe at his disposal. Well, it's nice to have that confirmation now. It depends on how they're used, because I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Like, they were one of the complaints. I like the meta nature of it, like, almost like the Whisperers were the fans. They don't want you to deviate from the story too much, that type of shit. Like, that was kind of cool. Them returning, I'm not the biggest fan of, and the whole Chapter 18 sequence is cool in some aspects, but it's a little like excessive, very Kingdom Hearts type shit. So it depends what they do with the Whispers going into the next game and potentially the third. It's definitely one of the least liked things from the remake project. So this question and answer is pretty cool because they talk about the platinum when it comes to Rebirth. It says, in the previous game, the hard mode was really challenging and required players to complete the game at least twice to get a platinum. Would it be the same this time? Hamaguchi says, the good news is that this time around, achieving the platinum trophy is a lot more difficult than in Remake. This is because this time we have a world map where you need to explore and collect items. Of course, we also provide the option for players to play the game more freely, and they can sort of decide how to proceed with the quest, whether to return, finish, or reset it. So when it comes to gaming, I'm not like the biggest platinum chaser, but I have been doing it here lately. I think I'm up to like, I don't know, 6 or so platinums on my PlayStation account right now. It's not the thing. It's not something I go for all the time. I do try to get as many trophies in like on Xbox achievements as often as I can, but it's not something I always try to do for every game. When it comes to Remake, I'm like just 1 or 2 trophies shy. I think I have to get like 1 dress for Cloud in Chapter 9. And then beating Jules, of course, like the hardest fucking trophy in that game. It's really not that hard. It's because I can like tie Jules or get just like a little bit less than him, but I get frustrated very easily when I'm doing something like that. I can only give it like 5 or so good tries, and I'm just like, I gotta fucking stop because I'm gonna get pissed. I'm gonna break something. So yeah, I'm really just almost there when it comes to the platinum for Remake, and apparently for Rebirth it's gonna be harder, he says, but mostly he says that it's because it's like an open world game and there's a lot of like it's a collectathon. You're gonna have to do like all the fucking like POIs and all the items that you can find type shit, right? So maybe that makes it harder, maybe that makes it easier. Just kind of depends. If you just have to kind of go around the world and like collect all the items and do everything on the world map type shit, it's not necessarily hard, it's just tedious, right? Something else that was interesting from this answer from Hamaguchi that I think is worth mentioning is they talks about being able to reset quests, because obviously we know that you can like pick up a bunch of side quests and you can continue the story and then hop back and do all your side quests, nothing's missable or whatever. But he mentions being able to reset quests. I don't know what the benefit of that would be exactly, unless like maybe you're stuck on a quest, like a boss is too strong and maybe you want to reset it for that reason, I guess. Or maybe like to do the quest a little bit differently. We know there's like dialogue options, but I don't know how like in-depth that dialogue tree stuff is when you're talking to people. But apparently you can reset quests. I just don't know what the benefit of it is exactly. Thought that was kind of funny, so we had to talk about it. So Hamaguchi says, there's also one thing that stuck in our memory while developing Remake, which is the minigames in Wall Market. I made the decision to make the minigame difficult to clear, and the reason was to remind players of the sensation of passing tough challenges. This was when I browsed through social media and there was a comment from an angry player asking who designed this particular minigame, and in a way, it made me really happy. So obviously he's got to be talking about the pull-up minigame that I just complained about, and apparently Hamaguchi gets off on watching us players struggle with that shit. What he's saying here, though, if you do have like tough challenges in the game that takes like several tries for somebody to beat, and they eventually beat it, like there's a sense of accomplishment, right? If the pull-up minigame was easy, nobody even talk about it. Nobody think about it. Who'd give a shit? We'd all do it. We'd pass it and then never think about it again, right? The fact that the Jules pull-up minigame is difficult is why it's talked about at all. So yeah, I kind of understand it. I just suck at it, kind of. Asked about the meaning of Rebirth, FF7 Rebirth director Hamaguchi says the word doesn't specifically describe the game's content. He explains it has more to do with the nature of the project, whereas Part 1 remade the game, this time it's been reborn. So that's a little confusing because they definitely talked about like the subtitles for the remake project having like a meaning besides like their literal meanings of like remaking FF7, FF7 being reborn or rebirthed or whatever. So it's kind of confusing for him to say that because they definitely said otherwise in other interviews. But yeah, according to this, it had nothing to do with the story content itself, which I think is untrue. Actually, speaking about that, there was actually an interview or something at some point from Nomura where he talked about like remake, the title having another meaning, but he couldn't delve into it at that point. That he'd tell us about it at a later point. And I remember we probably did talk about that somewhere. He probably gave us an answer for that. But yeah, like been told from Nomura that like FF7 Remake has like different meanings. It's not just them remaking FF7. So it's a confusing answer from Hamaguchi for sure. So with this answer, they talk about Airth's fate and the Forgotten Capital and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of interesting. So the question is, previously there was a discussion about Forgotten Capital. As you know, the Forgotten Capital location is the most historic moment in the Final Fantasy VII series. You know, the moment where Airth is it. The moment shocked many gamers in the original version. What do you think about the reaction of gamers to that moment? And is there some kind of twist to that thing? So that question, and to all the gamers regarding the you-know-what moment, we can confirm that we will give you a big surprise. So you can look forward to later in the game. And see, with stuff like that, that's why on this channel we talk about like things changing pretty often. Because like I don't understand the point of building up like the Forgotten Capital and Airth's fate and talk about delivering a big surprise if she's just going to die like she did in the original. Like that's not a big surprise. That's actually, in fact, the opposite of a surprise. It's what we're all expecting, right? So I don't know what the difference is going to be. People talk about like Zack intervening or somebody else dying, or maybe Cloud being the one that kills Aerith this time, something along those lines. And maybe they could go that route, right? Where things aren't different. Like Aerith is still dying, but it's in a different way that's more shocking. Maybe they go that route. But if they go that route, that's cool or whatever. I just expect there to be something big along the way somewhere, either the second game or the third game, because unless they're just straight up lying about Zack, right? Which is, I guess, technically possible too. But they've said that Zack's alive. If he's alive, and there's still whispers going into the fucking second game, like, how is there not like a big difference? Like, it's not just like a reinterpretation. Like, there's drastically different things than the original FF7. And saying that like Zack is alive in like interviews and shit when he's not isn't like, you know, misdirection or a red herring, as people say all the time. Like, that's just straight up fucking lying, and I would not be a fan of that. So it just remains to be seen. And I think that's kind of it when it comes to the info, at least that I'm aware of right now. There was a lot of interviews, but there's a lot of like repeated stuff. Like a lot of the interviews had almost like the similar layouts, and like there's like one or two interviews that had the platinum like answer question and stuff like that. And Hamaguchi talking about like the hard mini game and wall market. So I wonder if there wasn't like a question and answer like thing with a bunch of like magazines or articles or whatever you want to call it. Magazines? What year is this? Like if he wasn't just like on stage like doing a question and answer thing and everybody was like writing down questions and answers or something along those lines, because it's a very similar format to some of these articles. Some kind of cool stuff from this, like confirmation of, you know, the Whispers returning, talking about like some minigame related stuff, no snowboarding, teasing a big surprise of the Forgotten Capital, whatever. There's some cool stuff here. Maybe not the best info we've had in recent times, but still kind of cool, I guess. I don't know if there's any other like good info out there that I've missed in the last like day or so. I'm sure that there is, because there was even more articles that I've seen that I kind of skimmed through, didn't really see anything interesting, but there's probably articles out there that I haven't seen, and translations and things that I haven't seen. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's not something out there that I'm not aware of. Anyways, though, that is the video, my dude. Subscribe to me if you guys are new to social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @YT. That is it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.